Good evening, friends. Welcome to this rebroadcast of my show, Sophia's Emporium, that was originally published on May 28th, 2016. My name is Suze Pratt, and today is January 11th, 2017. It is my hope that this information will help anyone that is targeted, blacklisted, or oppressed through their, little family secrets. Some call it the generational curse. So I'd like to share my screen and bring you to the video of the day. And real quick, I do want to say that I'm going to start into this a couple minutes into this show because it drives me absolutely wild to hear myself thank or approve of anything that the Conscious Consumer Network, Mel V, or Biggie Boho says or does. Please disregard the purple banner stamped on my forehead that asks for your donation or euro. This information is given freely to the world. Thank you. Even though I have never been involved one day in what I thought was war, now I realize that I've always been in the battle. So, welcome to today's show. And I do still set out here on Sophia's Emporium to always seek out true knowledge and to reverse this irreversible thing. So it's a little bit of alchemy today. And, I was thinking about if I had a guest or whatever it was, or if I was you guys, you'd be asking questions. So let's just start right here. You may ask yourself, how do I fit into these programs that have dictated not only my life, but my entire lineage? And the second thing that you might want to ask yourself, and I know people say this in a joking manner all the time, but I mean it very serious, is how is it that us survivors are actually still here and functioning? Because really, this false program we've all been under, they claimed it right out loud. I mean, you don't have any business being here. And at any time, if they want, they push a little button or come send some guys in black suits or whatever. So I know why I'm here, and we'll surely be exploring that today. And I hope that through life charting, that you can do this for your own self too. And I promise it will be extremely enlightening and free your mind, body, spirit, and soul. Okay. One last thing. And this is a big one because it comes from the people that you would consider to be the top players, or the cabal, or the Illuminati, or, the people that work for the dark overlords or whatever. Okay, so keep in mind, every single person has a higher purpose. And this has always been. So, where do people sell out? And why do they do it? And the whole answer we already know is survival. And so the way it manifests is what we know as greed. All right. So that's my little opening intro. And really seriously, thank you so much for being here and sharing this time and holding space with the international community as we go forward. I'd also like to thank Conscious Consumers Network, of course, and Mel and Biggie. I missed them just a little bit this week because we didn't have Journalism Academy. So I got some things done, and you'll be seeing a few more iMovies that I recently made. And one more thing. At the end of last week's show, which just was really put up today, so I'm sure very few people have seen it. At the end of that show, not only was I talking about how excited I am for next Saturday on June 4th, when Randy Moggins comes on Sophia's Emporium. There was something else that I was very excited about, and here's what it is. So, for all of y'all that know my story, I've been targeted and blacklisted my whole life, and people have always told me to shut up and not tell my story, and then poof, we hit the phenomena, and I'm off and rolling. But after the whole Mike Brown slang and the chaos that has been in this town, and everywhere in the world, St. Louis University, which is a huge, huge college here in St. Louis, I had finally made contact with them. Back in the day when they first contacted me, I didn't even know how to find my email. And, 7, 8 months later, when I found it, a student contacted me and asked if I'd like to do an interview over email. And I respectfully declined because that sounds like a game for a fool or insanity at the least, because you really want to make sure that you document everything that's going on and you're able to substantiate it with facts, figures, and statistics, which obviously you can't do on that email. So about a month ago, I spoke to a wonderful woman, and her name is Reagan, and she made sure to let me know that she has a PhD and she's a grown-up, and she's actually really interested. And what her question is it seems like either the wrong questions are getting asked or the wrong people are answering the questions. And I thought, I like this gal. And we had a great, great interview. I've got an hour and a half on video that will go into an iMovie. And I just wanted to let you know, it is. It's really scary sometimes sticking your neck out and knowing that there's people that want you silenced. But you see, when you have that faith, it's all covered. We're really in a new paradigm now. And each person that I meet and come together and we have this, common interest, or we have this work to do, they're all wonderful people. So never give up hope. And I think that you'll see by the end of today's show why life charting is going to be essential in all of our lives. All right. People ask, what are you even talking about, Suze? Why would you life chart? And so I thought I'd like to go over that just a little bit with you guys today, because it's going to tie in, of course, to a story that I never knew until about 4 years ago. And so see, what we're dealing with current time here, guys, is that we get news handed down to us. And of course, it is very stressful and it is a shocker. And so what that does is it gives a window of opportunity to separate people and to create chaos where really it's all kind of, it's a distraction like we talk about. So anything that can keep you from focusing on your experience and how it can help with the world, because it will prove to you that we're all linked up without a doubt. I'm going to have to say that that's a huge purpose. And also what it does for your own family. And so now, of course, your children and your grandchildren and the legacies that will follow. So originally, when I started life charting, you see, this was the original template or format. And if you're considering that you could cram your entire existence into these 1 by 3/4 inch boxes, you can see where it might be hard, even if you can create a code to do this, that others wouldn't be able to crack the code. And that's what we're trying to do, is bring an end to the spell casting that's been created through these half-truths and misunderstanding of language. Now, when people ask, well, hey, how do you get started on this kind of a project? Obviously, I got started on a very small piece of paper. And within about 1.5 years, it turned into this. So there's a lot of ways you can get started. And of course, it really matters not whether you yourself feel artistic. There are always ways that you can create art without actually drawing out the picture. And so I guess the biggest example of that these days is, the coloring mandalas, where they already give you the image and then you go ahead and color it yourself. So let's see, how do I want to do this today? Okay, you can see that pretty well. And there are always 4 categories to life chart, the 4 main ones you start with. So you have your ego patterns, which is how the physical body reflects the individual's inner world. And then you would also, like when you're thinking about what that means, you would immediately go to your health and immunization records and photographs. And that would start to put the pieces together. Most people have a hard time knowing what age they were when a particular image was taken, or say the story that surrounds that image. And fear not. See, these are all parts of that program that seek to take the soul, or to steal little bits of data information. And as you work with this method, just like what is happening with the media, when you hear a story that you can't believe somebody fibbed to you about, all of a sudden you gain back a piece of maybe what you forgot, because at the time you were focused on something else, which is definitely a multidimensional reality, as we'll soon see. Now, when you talk about your interests and studies, you would review report cards, awards, favorite books, media, and extracurricular activities. So, that's pretty self-explainable. And it's also something that is much closer, I would say, to the forefront of your experience, because these days, of course, that's all anybody talks about and focuses on, whether you're getting media from the mainstream or whether you're getting it on the internet. It's all about information and how you handle it. The next thing we would look at, which is huge, is your friends and family. Now, this would be your relationships with your peers, teachers, and mentors. You could reference class pictures and yearbooks. And you would also want to consider the 3 types of soulmates and, spiritual family. You don't just have to stick with your bloodline kin, although it's fascinating. We're all family. Last but not least, we look at our places, jobs, and our mission. So that's about how lifestyle and occupations shape your belief systems within the box. for the program and why you love where you live. And it helps you definitely reconnect to your roots and your location on the planet, right? Last thing I wrote down with this is, are you a lifer where you're at or are you a nomad? And both of those things are noble and they both have a story. So consider all those things when you think you don't have a story, because I promise you, we all do. Mine might be a little more colorful or in your face because, of course, not choosing to separate my business from my professional life and considering my friends are part of my spiritual family, you can see why, to me, this is very important. And it helps me to stay positive even when tough things come. Some people say, well, man, all your stuff is pretty sad. You've had some stories. And it's like, we all do. And that's why we're in the pain we're in and why Mother Earth is suffering the way she is. So, all right, this next page is all about what happens at particular times in your life. So I'm going to zip through that real quick. Between birth and 3 years old, we have a strong birthright that we come in with. And that is this intuitive interaction with the angelic realm and the invisible forces. And of course, I've told y'all that they came for me when I was 3. So to me, this is very important to face the next things because what I've learned through experience and then was confirmed by spirit through a whole host of enlightened ones that I've met on the internet, about the real story behind these things. And then you put it together and you realize you do know more than what you think. So these years up till 7, they say, are ruled by temperament. And so before the age of 5, our heart brains only know our direct home environment. By the age of 7, we are consciously observing the outer world. And by age 9, we come to the realization that we directly interact with the world, whether we want to or not. We begin to define our personality and our mood. And the reaction to how you deal with conforming to controls and systems. So, doesn't that make a lot of sense if we explore what we've learned, say, about why people lose bits of memory or time, or say if you come from a family that might have been involved in MK Ultra or Operation Monarch or Paperclip. This is when the separations happened. Like they take these kids and, they were said were smart or special or, from certain families and put them in another room and give them some special tests. And, sometimes they say that even when you went to the doctor or the dentist, that they slipped you a Mickey and then they worked on you. And that's exactly what happened to your buddy Suze. So here again, I'm going to tell you, I know this from experience. Okay. Now, the years between 10 and 12, there's a lot that goes on. But of course, once you're just stabilizing, puberty hits, and isn't that a confusing time for people also? So when you get to puberty, your soul comes to the forefront of your experience instead of your temperament. And something interesting about your soul is you start to ask yourself, why do I believe the things that I believe? And so, of course, at this point, your family and your friends and your social interactions become paramount. This is your peer group. This is who molds you and decides if you're funny or serious or full of shit or crazy. So you see these people all have their little personas that they bring to the table too. Okay. This is one that always still, I can remember it like it was yesterday. So at age 21, approximately, between 20 and 21, the spirit asks the soul, will you continue to learn and grow? Or do you know it all? And see, that's why I say God bless the self-educated, because the fools that pay for an education and then get to the end and say, well, I know it all, and I don't need to learn anymore. I'm brilliant. Man, they are so shoved in the box, they don't even know, do they? And it's so hard because a lot of those people are our friends and our families. I have a lot of stories, of course, and have a lot of experience with that. Okay. Between the years of 21 and 28, they call it the karma-free years. And I always thought, what in the world does that mean? And the best way I can put it to y'all is that those are experimental years, and say you mess up, you make a mistake, whatever. It doesn't have to follow you the rest of your life. I would say it's a time of free exploration before the initiation, the next initiation. And you know what that is if you're looking at, say, the cosmic Christ. So we're coming into 30 to 33. So you're at your ultimate potential at 30, they say. And this is your journey to Christhood that I just mentioned. They tag 33 as the crisis year, and it's associated with the path and ancient knowledge. And the ego is now full blown because this dark side of the ego, it spent years, hopefully, saying this is who I am and this is what I do, this is my story. But then whether it's because you got married or you had a kid or you're in a job, your dream job that makes you cry every night, it's tough during then because you start saying, well, this is who I am, but this is what I want you to do. I want to control you. And see, isn't that a great part of the false program? Because all of a sudden now, shit, you don't got time to take care of your own self. You got to take care of the less fortunate, right? And there again, that's the old stroke of the ego, and they've been using it forever without even knowing. I think that's part of the parasite that we all refer to when we're talking about, whether it's little implants or programs or things. I mean, think of a parasite. It always looks for a host. And that's what it feeds on. Okay. Now, by 35 or 40 years old, we're coming into what they call the wisdom years, another primary initiation time. And in ancient cultures, people were not even allowed to speak within an open community group until that age. And, of course, we can cite a lot of people, especially in the recent past, that have brought incredible technological or scientific advancements to the forefront. So it's not saying somebody isn't wise before that age, but here's what it is saying, is that for some reason it's just a little easier to manipulate that pure idea and turn it into some kind of crap. Maybe once the time you get to the age of wisdom, you can actually fortify and protect your creation that you manifest. Okay. By the age of 42, because now you're in your angel years, It's time to burn out the dross, as the esoteric or the wisdom schools would refer to that. And all that simply is starting to filter out all the things that really aren't real. They're just false programs. So, usually people are crying, they're so old at 40. I know you all know that ain't true. I'm 52 and I feel like I get a little younger all the time. So, all right. We have another May initiation year by the age of 49. And that's the year of the priesthood. So, if you've done all your little homework and exercises and taught yourself what you need to know and figured out who you are, then you enter into this priesthood of what we call these humans that have started to transcend and transform and go beyond what the human machine theoretically can do. So think about it like that. Of course, if you don't burn these things out, that's why the rapid decline in health after the 40s. So some people would be talking about karma at this point, and that's a good enough word. I can go with that, but we always have to be able in the end to say that it was our choice to do what we did or what we didn't do, even if there was a million other people around at that time. The next we have ages 63 to 70. And we get those karma-free years again. So once I get to 63 and we have this incredible new time here on the earth, and we get rid of all the ding-dongs and the puppets and the clones and the whatever they are, you get to redefine what they call retirement. And all I know is that I don't even believe in the word retirement. I mean, I get it. But just remember, your career will always evolve. And back to your 50s when your reward to redefine your career. See, that's where I'm at right now. And so when I tell you it's an honor, I speak from a place of a career that I love and that I have loved for the last 30 years. So it's been wonderful to have fulfilling work and then step into a new paradigm and have this experience. And of course, still do the other thing too. See, you don't have to get rid of anything. You just keep adding up that energetic currency. And that is what makes one rich, my friends. All right. So they say by the age of 84 that you've completed a human cycle. And I've also heard it said, of course, that by the age of 72, we have another finish point initiation. And so sometimes after that age, people start to decline, whether it would be mentally or physically. And that's just theoretically, of course. So just depends on what you do while you're here. It's nice that we actually have seen what they call centurions, which are those that reach 100. Sometimes you see that on morning TV if you watch mainstream. It's always one of those things that makes your heart happy, And in this lifetime, they say that the human life maxes out at 120. Now remember, in the whoosh of a hand, new ways will be established. So I would think with this next shift in consciousness that we will see people that go beyond 120 and actually become inspirations to help the young people regain their wellness. Because remember, all these people that have been poisoned, I mean, it's a lot to come back from. That's why I'm always fortunate, I think, to have grown up in the time that I did, because it was able, it was pretty easy, I guess, to be well and to stay healthy and to have choices. Where now, so we have some nightmare thing that seems to be making them, and none of us really agree to them. But here again, our forefathers told us, well, get off your butts and change it. So it's pretty deep. So I've written a lot of things, that would also play into life charting. And I'm going to show you something, and it's not the happiest thing, but here again, to know that, say, in 1970, that my mom burned me with boiling water and that I have no hair right here. And the minute I got to the hospital, of course, I have no memory. And so now it's clicking and I'm putting things together. But to show you the difference in a child's eyes after they've been traumatized, and you guys know good and well, that's not how my eyes appear. And I can also show you, say, pictures from before I was burned, if I go through this whole thing. And you would see where my eyes were very happily and sparkly, and I was engaged in the world. So another day, another time. And, Randy and I talk a lot about life charting and the importance of it. So I'm sure that we'll get to way more of an in-depth look at this next week's show. Okay. Now, the next question would be, how could I help you? And of course, I think you can see how. Until what I put together, all there was out on the market to do this kind of work was this chart, and the very small group of people that did it journaled in notebooks. So I'm going to be really excited one of these days when I'm able to upload everything I need to and show you guys the blank templates for y'all to, fill out and to actually choose the artwork that you want to represent yourself. I've got about 50 incredible images. And of course, yes, they are mandala images, where you can color them in and decorate them. And then see, you really are an artist. You're more than what you knew you were or are. And you always have been too. Okay. I guess I should give you one example from my NeverEnding Story of how my levels of perception advanced and went on through time. So, say early on, even before I was burned by my mom, I knew I didn't trust her. And after I got burnt by my mom, I saw her like a split personality, kind of like that spooky movie Sybil, if you ever saw that, with Sally Fields. And she had, I don't know, 7 or 8 different personalities. Now, even before I loved sociology in high school, you see, I was meeting all of those personalities that lived inside my mom and seeing how unhappy she was. And, oddly enough, even during those years, how in the world did a little girl like me know about Adolf Hitler and all the Nazi stuff? Well, I can answer that question now. And of course, this is a benefit of life charting, guys. You know. Okay, so back to my mom. You figure out somebody so you can love them unconditionally, but not be abused by them. And you say, now we're grown up, we're a big girl now. And I get in my angel years, and here comes an angel friend that at one time worked for the government. She was actually hired to do her energy work and clear out the negative energy from the halls of Congress. What a trip, huh? So she tells me that my mom was a transcendental medium. And of course, she asked me if I knew what that was. And I do know what those two words mean, but I wanted to hear her take on how you put them together. And so here's what she said was that, well, of course, before you come here, you make these contracts. So she allowed herself to be manipulated by off-world planet, non-physical astral entities that would reside in her and, kind of animate her and move her around. So finally, blah, blah, blah. When you tie in the whole thing about my grandpa, which we will be doing today, and you see what his position was, and then you figure out when my mom was born, it was affected and involved in the MK Ultra program. So if that programming started early on and she never knew anything else, I mean, really, was she even conscious the things she did to me? And see, as I was having to tell these hard stories, of course, my friends were having nervous breakdowns because they loved her. The memories they have of her is, of course, she would go to McDonald's and buy each kid whatever they wanted to eat. So we were eating 2 large French fries and Big Macs and 4 or 5 sodas. I mean, and sometimes like my mom was one of those people that you could say that expression, misery loves company. So say if you were fat and unhappy, well, then she could feel sorry for you and give you more stuff to make you fat and happy or fat and unhappy. See, I don't like stuff like that. And so it became a lifelong study with me because surely if I would have believed or bought into the program that I was presented with, I wouldn't even be here today, y'all. All right. So, wait till you see this. Now, I did share this with some friends on Facebook maybe 6 weeks ago. And there were a couple people, bless their hearts, that really were excited about seeing this rare book that I'm going to show you in a moment. And they asked me if I could copy it or share it or, give information or whatever. So now that I know how to tag my shows, I'll make sure to put that there. And we'll connect this for people. But it's going to take us down such an odd road. So this book right here, and it's called Education for Peace, an Untried Road. Here's your background story. So when my oldest was a few years old, we had went to a local library, and this was on the sale table, and it was a dime, like 10 cents. And so, of course, I bought it. And then we go back to another story that I've shared with you guys. And I've also done YouTubes on. This book was written in 1970. And so the focus of the book So they're addressing the adults and they're saying, look, do you want to know why your kids don't trust you? And the answer would be, is that the first three things that they remember being told were a lie. So the first one was the Easter Bunny, followed by Mr. Claus, and last but not least, the stork. So, see, I was from the era where parents were not telling the stork story. I never heard that one, but I guess it just depends on where you grew up and how your parents had dealt with sexuality, right? Okay, so we're going to read out of this book. And when I said I wanted to, even though I know there's no time, I mean, really, there's still an importance in tying together the past, the present, and what we're dealing with right now, because that's, I think, the alchemical equation, like I said, to reversing this monstrosity that we have been blamed for individually, although we really realized that it was the corporations and what we consider to be government, but the individual has been blamed. And so that's another reason to life chart. And it's also a reason to explore this, because this whole program becomes so evident. All right. We're going to start out on page 2. And of course, on the first page, chapter 1, we're asking, why educate for peace? Keep in mind the current educational system, right? Okay. So they say this. Education is often thought of as a course of study or training which will teach the young skills which will aid them in earning a living. They learn to communicate and to figure. Beyond these things, the individual may be taught a specialized skill such as carpentry, mechanics, printing, or a profession such as teaching, law, or engineering. He is prepared to work effectively in a line calculated to provide him the necessities of life, perhaps also to bring him wealth and distinction. Another conception of education, slightly more complicated yet not entirely disassociated, is that it is a preparation for living. That is, it will teach the individual to live fully and satisfactorily, taking into account aesthetic needs. Yet another concept might be called training to live constructively, which includes and goes beyond the other two. Man lives in society. He cannot live alone, obviously. He has urges, animal and spiritual. He may live happily or unhappily, or in a gray mixture of both, which seems to be the most common state of man. Right. Okay, we're jumping to page 2 now. Man has conceived and produced weapons capable of extinguishing earthly life, yet he has developed no safeguards against their use. Consequently, every man, woman, and child lives in danger of instant obliteration. We have got to get used to the idea. We have heard the warnings so often that the sound has become dull. We do not believe it could happen, perhaps because we have found no sure way to prevent it. Okay, because we feel helpless in the face of such an awesome possibility. So we shrug it off, push it out of our minds, tell ourselves that our fine military establishment will protect us. But other military establishments are working along the same lines, feverishly devising more and more weapons. Experts tell us there is no adequate defense against nuclear attacks, so the only escape lies in making friends, where in the past we have made enemies. Is this why everybody talks about frenemies and says keep your enemies closer than your friends? I mean, that's like twisted, right? But it's what we deal with in this current battle that surely the forces of light have already won. So that's the opinion of this journalist and hairdresser, right? Thanks. Okay. So I'm going to jump a little bit more onto the next chapter here. And we're going to talk about development and friendship. All right. We must learn to live and help live, to develop political structures which will maintain a peaceful world society. We seem to be laboring under the delusion that this cannot be done, that the situation is called starve. While the earth becomes more heavily populated by human beings whose lot must be fear and misery. Program. See, okay. It may be impossible to make friends if we pursue a policy of self-seeking, but if we are willing to share and cooperate, if we are willing to acknowledge for the weak the same rights as the strong so loudly proclaim for themselves, the problem becomes less difficult. That sounds nice. Okay. When the strong recognize the possibility that they too might be vanquished, might even be exterminated, perhaps more thought will be given to the matter of peaceful, friendly, cooperative coexistence. Is that why we need clones and AI? So we can all be nicer to each other? I keep reading. There may be as much honor attached to the prevention of massacres, pillage, destruction of homes, and starvation of children as to relief after the dirty work is done. Effort and money expended on the production of military equipment, largely useless for other purposes, might be better spent in giving underprivileged people the assistance they so sorely need. Like vaccines? Okay. There is no dividend on an investment in bonds. Or opium or drugs? You know, I'm putting those things in. That's not out of here. I'm involved. The money spent on a bomb or a missile is irretrievably gone. The money's not real, kids. Okay. The money, if it were spent building a factory in Nigeria or India or China, there could be a satisfying return on the investment, not only economically, but also in terms of human well-being. Spent for a factory, it would provide employment for the unemployed, food for the starving, and dignity for the underprivileged. Now, this was exactly the storyline that Joe's dad believed when he worked for McDonnell Douglas and went selling all the jobs overseas and took the vacations and set up the factories. So see, this is a nice book, but there's a story underneath that's not so very nice. And how did things all get put together? Okay. So, I'm going to read one more thing. Impossible? How will we ever know unless it is tried? All governments are composed of people, and all people, even leaders, have the characteristics of man. If leaders would seek greatness through construction rather than destruction, politics would take a great step forward. Okay. Now, you know, I went to go look to see for my own self who this Dr. Charles Merciusca is. And I'll spell the last name for any of you people that like to do your own research. MerciecA. And he was the Secretary General of the IAEWP, which stands for the International Association of Educators for World Peace. And one last thing about this book, because you know I always do tie in synchronicities and let you know there's a phenomenon in progress. This book was actually written and published by the Chancellor of Missouri. So whenever I say that to people, they're like, I didn't even know we had a chancellor. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm just showing you the book and seeing what you think about it. All right. Now, I did want to share with you what I found when I did this research. There was a nice young gentleman that had seemed to pass before his time. And they did like a beautiful memorial service for him, you know, and made it into a YouTube. Now, of course, he has this last name, and it's obvious that he's not here in the United States. And of course, he's in Italy. And so then the other thing I found was this older man that had passed by the same name. And he was actually one of those priests of Malta. So that was interesting. And of course, you know, bloodlines are important. It's good to know where you come from. So nothing on this man, his own self. And what I find interesting about this too is now we're going to take a step forward and I'm going to fill you in on the pre-book and the post-book. So there was a YouTube that I found when I was doing my research called Education for Peace, 1950, Social Guidance Education Documentary. And the channel you can find that on is BAL, BAL 73 TV. And boy, wasn't it a lovely thing. So basically what they did is, even though, say, the United States claimed it, they really made it evident they were uniting the peoples of the world. And so they let all the different colored people play sports together and talk to each other and even do that simple ball exercise that I had seen, say, in Waldorf school, you know, where the kids stand in a circle and they pass the ball and they do the teamwork. So that video I didn't want to take up your time with because it is so like just cheese ball. You know, I didn't think we needed that. Okay, so after the book, mysteriously, no longer is it in the United States. And so that's okay too, because we are surely not the do-all end-all, as we've found out now. So our next video that Biggie's going to play, or our first video of the day, right, is called IAEWP Intro Movie. And it was filmed in the year 2013 And the YouTube channel that you guys can find this on is called Steve Rajan. So it's Rajan, Rajan, Steve. I appreciate you, whoever you are. So let's go ahead and roll that video, Biggie, and turn everybody on to this education for peace.
So now that we're caught up on an education for peace, now we're going to do a little disclosure that's going to walk us into our next segment. And you guys know, or maybe you don't, but I have watched literally thousands of YouTubes as I do my research, right? So yesterday, and then I would say that started at midnight. So consider I had a whole day down the tunnels of time with someone that I really appreciate. So it's time for me to do my little video shout out to people that I don't know, right? There's this guy. I really dig him. His name is Sean. It's spelled Sean, Stone. And he does this show called Buzzsaw. And I think y'all might really like it because they're shorter, very compressed material that flows. I mean, like a stream. It's awesome. And I want to read you the list of his work and his interviews that I watched as I was putting together my show. And, you know, really, sometimes the best journalists may have their shows, you know, a few weeks or a month in advance. But like I've confessed to you guys many times, these shows arise up in me. I couldn't have foreseen how these things were going to come together until yesterday. And the mark of a great educator, okay, is one that they could give a presentation or a show and say they forgot something that they felt was really important. Well, you would never bring that up because, of course, the people that are listening in and learning, see, as long as they learn one thing that they can walk away with, their time was purposeful. So I want to tell you that my show would have been purposeful with or without Buzzsaw. But with Buzzsaw, man, we got a phenomenon progress again. So I'm going to read you the list. And this is in order. And then imagine that it's all going to flow into this war story for Memorial Day. First up, The Shadow and Metaphysical Code of Light plus Darkness with Colin E. Davis and Melissa Mary, M-A-R-I. Mars Colonizes, Alien Bloodlines and Illuminati in Space with our friend Alfred Weber that we have here on Conscious Consumers Network sometimes, as y'all know.
Next up, Illuminati History, Genealogy, and Secret Rituals with Fritz Springmeier. Shadow Government, Intelligence Secrets, and 9/11 Truth with John Banks. Religious Secret Societies, Murder, and the Last Crusade with Jeffrey Gilson. MK Ultra, Project Monarch, and Government Mind Control with Ron Patton. HARP, Weather Warfare, and Full Spectrum Dominance with Elena Freeland. Illuminati, History of the Secret School of Wisdom by Joseph Wages. And last but not least, friends, 2015 Bilderberg Conference Review, Collapse and False Flags with Daniel Estulin. How about that for a mouthful, huh? But I really like the presentation. Mr. Stone is calm, cool, and collected, even though he knows from experience and from being someone on the inside what it's like to know about this Illuminati stuff. So, hi, Sean. I'm your new buddy, Suze. Okay. Now, I'm going to go back to my book, Education for Peace. And like I was sharing with Biggie, this book is in pieces. It's so old. Here's my cover. Here's the middle. And I'm missing the last 4 chapters, but they are here at the Big Yellow House. So I will find them as well. Okay. Pages 4 through 6. We seem to live in a maze of double standards. Religious principles are taught but rarely practiced, perhaps because considered impractical. They are beautiful sentiments for children who are at the same time taught to fight for their rights. This double standard has led in some cases to the disavowal of all religion, yet there is probably a higher happiness quotient in truly religious persons than any others. That would be spiritual people, not religious. Perhaps if it were possible to abandon fear, coexistence would have a better chance. And what is fear? I love this definition, by the way. Okay. Our definition might be the visualization of evil to come. Might not human beings be taught to visualize good to come? Such a shift would, of course, go against many human traditions, many human practices, and many deeply integrated human beliefs. Yet there is no evidence that human attitudes cannot be guided into basically constructive and cooperative channels. Perhaps there is something wrong with our national ideals as well as our idols. Perhaps the individual consciousness should be given the dignity of recognition in such matters as killing and cheating. What has all this got to do with education for peace? The emphasis has changed. The military, once considered essential for the well-being and safety of nations, has now become their greatest enemy and their greatest threat. Unless this truth is accepted, man is likely to be exterminated by the military establishment he has built for his protection. So, it is time to think in a way we never thought before. The individuals, the family, and the small community are obviously laboratories for the study of man. And if man is to learn to get along with his fellows, he must learn what is involved. Our problem is to find areas of agreement between human beings between races, political groups, and nations, and defined and practice minimal principles of restriction, which will keep them from killing each other. This is the basic, the immediate, the practical necessity. First comes the idea, then its trial, and then the passing it on to the teaching of others. Right. Education has always been of prime importance to military success. We read of the wooden horse at Troy and the Macedonia phalanx. We know that even in ancient times, soldiers were carefully trained. Today, more than ever, military careers depend on painstaking education. There is training in military theory, physics, psychology, use of weapons, ballistics, aeronautics, naval tactics, submarines, missiles, and propaganda. Most young men who attend a state university are required to study military science and tactics. Part of military education has been included the idea that military service is honorable, that it is honorable to die and sacrifice for one's country without question. That authority makes right. Probably no system of education is more comprehensive than that for war. There are hundreds of skills that can be learned in military service as adjuncts to performing military duties. All other considerations are subordinate to one primary objective: to win any military adventure that is undertaken. Family responsibilities, religious considerations, personal wishes, freedom of conscience all must be put aside for the purpose of destroying or try to destroy any designated foe. No other profession, not medicine, nor science, nor philosophy, nor law, has the massive, terrifying, implacable, authoritarian system of education that is necessary to a military career. There are academies to make officers who wear fine uniforms and become gentlemen by edict. These officers are respected according to their rank and authority. They are subject to total discipline, which is far removed from the principles of freedom, as is a chimpanzee from the United States presidency. It would seem that education is necessary for success in almost any career. Alrighty then. So, let me just spin my chair a little bit. I want to show you my pointer for today, so I can point out players in the family to you. But Joe made this, and of course, this is one of those silver dollar, oh, I can't think of the name right now, but it's awesome to put this by your dryer to clear EMFs. And so Joe had a piece and he made it into the little arrowhead, and he stuck one of his bird feathers on it and made an arrow. So this would be my pointer for today. And what we're going to be talking about is my grandpa and this World War II thing. So for those of you that have heard a little bit, my grandfather was the managing editor for the Custer Combateer. And this was part of the publication of what was called Stars and Stripes. And this was the propaganda machine that came out of the war. All right. Now, this guy doing hair in this picture, it's my Grandpa Mitchell. And no, he was not a hairdresser. And yes, this is my grandmother that he's playing with her hair and loving on her. And so I have to ask this question as his granddaughter, since I never knew him. Is this why my gram was so supportive of me taking that scholarship to go to beauty school, and that she was so supportive of me opening my own hair salon when I was almost 21? Was that a piece of him that she was able to keep for herself and hang on to? Because I know they loved each other, even though they never said it when I was growing up. My mother and my grandmother never spoke a single solitary word about him. Now, let's go back into levels of perception. Originally, I thought nobody talked about my grandpa because they were so hurt and devastated when he passed in 1950. So you imagine my mom only was able to spend 5 years with this man. And of course, my grandmother spent the rest of her years without this man. Bless his heart. So, back to the story. Being that he was the managing editor of the Custer Combatier, you see that he would have been the kind of guy that could get some secrets out. He could also speak about how he truly felt and what he had observed being forced into the military in 1942. So, I thought what I'd do is I would real quick show you guys some of the letters that he actually mailed back to Graham before this big We Won World War II story came out, because my grandpa felt terribly guilty and confessed that he did not believe in the war effort, nor did he find them to be true and honest and noble in their intentions. And so he wound up being pretty high up because he was the secretary, call it, someone that collected these figures and statistics and data. And the hardest thing is of course, when you're at war, see, there's a point system, and the more that you kill people and fuck shit up, the more points you get. So my grandpa didn't have to kill anybody. He was too old to really be toting a gun. And, they had like a cutoff year. I don't know if it was 38 or 40 years old. So he was older than that when he was enlisted, when he had to get to going. And the infantry that my grandfather became a part of was the famous 85th Infantry. And, I had never really studied war in depth that much. It just isn't one of my favorite topics. But I didn't know that, say, even when they did this whole scam about the war coming to an end, he knew, excuse me, he knew so much about that. And so, okay, he gets held over till after the war, even though he's got a baby and a wife that need him. He's there messing around in Italy, and then they finally send him home. So, long story short, one thing I did hear from my grandmother and my mom is that he must have had a heart attack in 1950 because he dropped dead. I bet you he had way too much information to keep alive, is what really happened. So These letters pick up in October of 1944, and of course, we get into our big military action in the beginning of 1945. So this is our little warm up to what goes down. Okay, here's your war profits, friends. And it says, we heard Swing on the radio from the States last night. He was in his best pessimistic form. He ranted at quite some length about the war in the Pacific against the insidious yellow peril, extending no less than a year and a half beyond the end of hostilities here. That gives the politicos and the dollar of the year men, who are averaging closer to $1 a minute in war profits. $1 a minute 80 years ago. So add inflation to that and wrap your brain around the numbers. Up to now, I've thought they probably planned to let it end in Europe this fall and in the Pacific next spring. Now I'm beginning to feel that they've officially advanced the date to mid-1945 for Europe and about a year later for Japan. I'm personally in favor of doubling their take from now on out so as to end the war that much sooner without damage to their sensitive pocketbooks, but with some conservation in blood and nerves over here. Okay. This is another one where he's sweating what's going to happen to him, all right? But for now, something more pleasant. I am no longer a rifleman on Army records. My CO has gotten a formal transfer through, and my spec number, which is the guide the Army uses in selecting fresh meat, has been changed to that of a clerk in Info Ed. The transfer may have been just a necessary formality, but nevertheless, it is a welcome relief to me. Okay. This one is kind of sad. He has friends that he had met at Camp Fannin, and the one guy wanted to get a Valentine for his girlfriend and then wound up buying her a bulletproof prayer book. He is having difficulties over here similar to those he had in the States. Young Sarno, the boxer from Chicago, will never have any more difficulties of any kind. That means he took his last breath. He didn't win an award and got to go home. Young Dickie O'Connor, the kid who went all the way from induction center to Italy with me, has had medical attention several times, but is back in the lines just now. Mel Schillen and I have been luckiest of the old bunch by far. One of Graham's best friends, because she always worked in corporate office, so was a guy named Mel. And now I think, wow, no wonder Mel was always calling and asking her, did she want to go out to dinner? And, she didn't ever have a man or go on any dates after my grandfather. Okay, so he's somewhere in Italy because, of course, he really can't say. We get plenty of news from the fighting front, some of it very direct from the feed bag, but not a word from St. Louis. I've been even sitting up nights listening to Berlin and Moscow, hoping to hear something from the Mississippi sector, but they are quite closed mouth on that subject too. Berlin did deny that they were losing the World Series. In fact, they do that every night. But since Stalin fired a 24-gun salvo for the Cardinals, not even a word about street fighting in Biddle Market. It must still be going on there. And he says, and who's ahead in that tussle between you and Barbara? That's my mom. Are you holding your own with her, or do you still have to hold her until she falls asleep and can't fight back? Wow. So at the end of this one, the training that he was taking in the military could have got him some credits from the University of Illinois. And he says, as I remember, you had in your valuable documents and diplomatic records, it's a secret file. You got some stuff in there. If you still can find it, please have a photostatic copy made and mail it to me. I may be able to pick up a college credit or two in my spare time over here. Do not misunderstand. If I enroll in the Armed Forces Institute for a subject or two, it will not in any way delay my homecoming. In fact, the courses are arranged so that should a man become eligible for deportation to the States, such enrollment will not interfere. God, he loved her and just wanted to get home to her. See, I always thought he dropped dead because he felt so guilty about having to be forced to go to war. And I'm sure that was part of it that broke his heart along the way. So there was truth in there. But of course, now it's expanded into this bigger truth. Oh. So my Gram was vested in Southwest Bell when she was 16. I have the document records. And she quit when she was pregnant with my mom. And now he's off at war. There's very little money. And she's talking about going back to work for Bell. And, back in the day, and we'll hear it in a video, their salary for a month, we're talking about the servicemen, was between $80 and $100 a month. And what did we say? They were making $1 a minute on the war machine. So he had a few things to say about that too. By November, he's telling her he just heard a radio song from the United States about, I wish I could hide inside this letter. We still get our best news from London and Berlin, but they can't tie U.S. broadcast for rose-colored rumors. Just heard to the effect that peace talks are already scheduled for Lisbon, Portugal. Lisbon being one of the few neutral capitals in the world is a logical place for peace talks, and despite the unconditional surrender propaganda, they do have to get together across a table somewhere, sometime. Back to hairdressing for a minute. Yesterday, I chalked up another first in Italy experience. I sat in a real American barber chair and had my hair cut by a barber with electric clippers. Most of my haircuts over here have been by another GI who had picked up a little barbering experience while sitting on an ammo box, or else by an itinerary guinea who knew more about the barber of Seville than about barbering. Oh, okay. What else we got here? Of course, that doesn't go literally. I do think I understand why they fight for Italy, but it really isn't for Italy at all, if that makes any sense. But if it doesn't make any sense to you, we've got a lot in common with a lot of GIs who are slugging it out within a very few precious miles from my CP. All this took place at some distance, quite a safe distance, in fact, from the scene of hostilities, as the safe and very sane colonists like to express it. The town must have really been something in Benito's heyday, a resort town. Reminded me very much of Excelsior Springs, Missouri. Do you know that Dr. Shealy is up by Excelsior Springs, Missouri? And now we're connected in the water story and all the little hidden things we found out in that precious book, Holy Water, Sacred Oil, by my friend Norm Shealy. Okie-dokie. Let's see. It was once a spa for big shot fascists, later a German high command HQ, now a rest camp for broken down GIs. Now don't read any unintended meaning into that. I was never further from being broken down physically myself. I just wish I could unload some of my avoidism on you right now. Or some word I can't even say he came up with. He was such a fantastic writer. And it's really nice that now I see where I get some of my skills from. Let's see. He's by a small town. He's talking about the background. He's talking about the Germans withdrawing. It is one of those few towns which was just off the beaten path of the war, as the Germans withdrew through this particular sector, and consequently the customary demolitions are conspicuous by their absence. Maybe that's another reason the town impressed me so differently than many we've been through, which not long ago must have looked very much as this one does now. It is tucked away in the mountains in such a way that it has escaped the heavy artillery. Only its rail connections were destroyed. He talks about margarine in here, and it's actually MAHNJAHRAY in Italian, and it means to eat, give anything edible. And so I thought that was interesting because, of course, for all of us people that are awake and aware, we know that margarine had no nutritional value. It was just a filler and another one of those little traps, it seems to be. He's talking about, at the end of his letter, how the kids are out there dealing with the drunk GIs in their open air sidewalk latrines, if you get what I'm driving at. Okay, so I got something to show y'all real quick. This is a graph that shows you how many people were killed and how things got moved around. Amazing. We don't have time to go into that, although it's fascinating. The other thing I like to show you is these were the actual routes where they moved things up and down the mountain for transits. And of course, there was a whole secret bunker built in the caves, just like what we've learned in our other disclosures. All right. So now I would like to run a video that represents the beauty of the country of Italy before it was destroyed. And so I made this little slideshow. Go ahead, Biggie. It's my grandpa. Isn't it a blessing to have these things? And, I laminate everything. So for the people that say, well, you just ruined the value of that. No, I didn't. It's going to survive, and my grandchildren to have all of this. So let's get down to my next iMovie because we're running short on time today. I had so much to say. This next video is a iMovie, and the words that I put into the footage come from the paper From Shelby to Victory. So let's go ahead and roll that one, baby. In January 1942, the War Department ordered the 85th Infantry Division into active military service. Brigadier General White H. Hayslip was placed in command, and on May 15, 1942, at Camp Shelby, Mississippi, one of the first all-selective service divisions was activated. Early in April 1944, the 85th Division went into the lines as a unit for the first time. Our men took up positions north of the Garrigliano River facing the Gustav Line. Minefields, well-placed machine gun positions, mortars, artillery, self-propelled guns. The firmly entrenched Supermen were all set and waiting for us to try and do something about it. The time was coming soon when we were going to do plenty about it. But first came the preparations. Our men dug in as they had never dug before. Outposts were set up every night for a month. Patrols went out to get information about the Nazi positions. For every shell that came in, we sent 5 back. Meanwhile, the plans for the offensive matured. Field Marshal Alexander readied his 2 armies, the 5th and the 8th. The time for the push was at hand. May 11th, 1944. It was a moonless night, and mist hovered over the valley. Men waited, tense in the blackness, each with his thoughts. This was the night. Soon now across the river of Italy, from the Tirana coast with the ghost-like casino to the Adriatic, the great assault would be on. The deafening roar of a great artillery barrage shrieked into the night. The earth rumbled, the sky was aflame. Tens of thousands of shells screamed and whistled overhead. For a half hour, every artillery piece and cannon and big gun along the Allied line poured shells at the enemy positions. It's a grim story, the story of those 3 days of superhuman effort. A platoon of one of our regiments reached its objective, dug in, and then was surrounded by the counterattacking enemy. One brief radio message came back from the men, then silence. When our troops retook that hill 48 hours later, the bodies of the platoon leader and his men were found surrounded by dead Germans. The struggle continued through May 12th and 13th. Hill 66, Hill 69, Hill 79, 58, 103, 113 East, Soviasano Ridge, Dominica Ridge, Cremoncelli, Cave di Argulia, bloodstained monuments to the stamina and heroism of the men of the 85th. Our relentless advance continued. All day on the 14th and on the next day, our infantry continued to take new positions. By noon of the 15th, the cracked Gustav Line was broken wide open. On the afternoon of the 15th, the division began its attack in this new phase. Our troops took Castellinato that night, and the enemy began a general withdrawal. Penitro and Scori were in our hands by the 16th. A surprise advance across rugged mountain terrain took the Nazi garrison at Sanino by surprise. Our troops, which had pushed over the mountains northwest of the city, cleared a stretch of Highway 7 and began closing in on Terracina. Ironically, the Nazis dug in among the tombs of the Terracina town cemetery, using the monuments for cover. The battle raged the entire day of May 23rd, and by the dawn of the 24th, Terracina was captured. The enemy now began to run for it earnest. The division stepped up its paces at its famous Indian hills, north of the confine marshes. The enemy put up rearguard resistance at places like North Trevelyan says, but this was quickly knocked out. Meanwhile, other divisions which had broken out of the Anzio beachhead were joined with Allied units pushing from the east, and the 85th Division was pinched out and passed to reserve after 49 days of continuous service. On May 30th, we were back in action, this time in the Larianano-Giulianello sector between Highway 6 and Highway 7, the roads to Rome. Larianano was taken in spite of stubborn Nazi resistance. The 85th continued their pursuit of the enemy up Highway 2 north of Rome, some 45 miles. On June 10th, our division was relieved after being in action 60 out of 62 days since April the 10th. Following a period of rest and training at Lido di Roma on the grounds of a royal estate south of Rome, the division moved 150 miles north while the Allied forces were closing in the Arno River at Florence. On August 15th, the 85th took over the defense of the Arno along a 25-mile stretch west of Florence between Belgasardo and Capan. Shelling and harassing fire and patrol activity were routine in this period. An added attraction at night was Bed Check Charlie, a solitary Luftwaffe plane which came over night after night to drop flares and bombs. For about a year, the German Tagesschau organization had been constructing a strong defense line across the northern Apennine Mountains. The mountains, 3,000 to 5,000 feet high, were in themselves a formidable objective for attacking troops, and with their carefully prepared pillboxes and strong points, the Germans were confident they could stop any Allied attempt to break through to Bologna and the Po Valley. The 85th Division was chosen to assault the Gothic line in the 2 Giogo Pass area, north of Florence and east of Highway 65. Altuzum to the right of 2 Giogo was a key point in the Gothic defenses, for it dominated the highway passing over the mountains to Firenzola. East of Altuzzo, the next mountain, Veruca, was a strongly fortified strong point from which any attack on Altuzzo would meet withering fire. The enemy's lines held for 3 days, but the hammer blows of our artillery and the persistent assaults of our infantry were slowly grinding them down. More and more of his positions had been knocked out. His counterattacks were less frequent and weaker. On Altuzzo, our forces had slowly fought their way towards the peak. The next morning, units of our division were sent ahead through the exhausted and decimated British, who had fought their way yard for yard through the Nazi defenses on paternal. The battle raged all morning. Finally, a weak point was discovered and a breakthrough achieved. On the 5th day, our men girded for the final assault. The big guns stepped up as their barrage. The men of the 85th pushed off once more. It was a day of great victories, the reaping of a harvest of 4 days of heroic effort. Veruca, Mills 918, 802, 1031, 1036, Paternal. Key points all along the line were stormed and held against the final, desperate counter-effects of the enemy. Altuzzo, the keystone of the Nazi defenses, was taken. The 85th Custer Division had helped break the Baltic Gothic line. For the next 45 days, the Custer Division constantly attacked and drove the enemy steadily back across the rugged Apennine mountain ranges in some of the roughest fighting country in the world. The 85th crossed the Senterno River and captured Firenzola. The division moved forward to a sector between the Salerno and the Medice River. Attacks were made across hills and ridges, overlooking the river valleys. The rains had come and the roads were deep mud mires. The enemy, falling back, blew every bridge. Supplies had to be brought up by mules and on the backs of men. Still, the 85th pushed steadily forward, taking objective after objective. Small wonder then that the enemy had begun to refer to us as an elite assault division. Our men had advanced in the vanguard of the 5th Army. They were within 8 miles of the Po Valley, but the time was not ripe for the final push into the valley. At the end of October, the division was ordered to withdraw from its forward positions to straighten the battle lines of the Allied armies. On November 22nd, our men were relieved from the line after more than 70 days of constant, grueling fighting. With the coming of spring, the 85th Custer Division was ready once again for a push-off, the final push, this time into the Po Valley and on to final victory. Our men will never forget the historic 2 weeks of the Po Drive, the break throughout the Apennine Mountains, the spearheads cutting across Highway 9, the smashing of Nazi resistance south of the Paterno River, the chase across the flatlands, and finally, the monumentous crossing of the River Po. Consolidate and advance northward towards Verona, everywhere Parisians bringing in prisoners, liberating towns. Finally, the 85th stood before the forbidding-looking mountains again, the Alps this time, over the Adige River and through the Adige defenses, and everywhere signs of its growing disintegration of the Wehrmacht. Historic May 2nd, 1945, the end of the war in Italy, and the surrender of masses of German troops to our division. 5 days later, May 7th, 1945, as our troops were moving up to Austria, the radio flashed the great news, unconditional surrender, a great moment for all mankind, and the men of the 85th could well be proud, for they had done their share to make victory possible. So even though that was poor image quality video, it was the most incredible thing that I was blessed with the video feed bringing that up for me. And so I get a better insight into my grandpa every minute. One thing my mom always believed was that he didn't want a daughter and that he wanted a son. And so that was never true. And I can prove that through the letters. And he actually wrote that many times. But I found it interesting that in my mom's baby book, he scribbled on it. She got in trouble. Graham put it in a vault. And her question was always, was she good or bad? So I think that that was her earliest programmings. And right there is my grandpa, A.V. Mitchell. So it's interesting how this all plays out. Now, we have very little time left. So I want to show you this video. And this blew my mind. So this is part of my grandpa's division, the 10th. And they were these incredible athletes. They said they were the most brilliant, intelligent, ambidextrous kind of dudes that there ever were. So believe it or not, wait till you see what turns out with these guys' story. Go ahead, Biggie.
If there's a member of the greatest generation in your family, then it's possible all this coverage of Italy has stirred up some memories. After all, former Senator Bob Dole arrived here as a young man during World War II. He was badly wounded during fighting with the Germans not far from here. There is a great story to go with every veteran, but one particular unit of U.S. GIs played a special role in the life of this nation and our own. Our report tonight from NBC's Jim Laseta. Okay, here we go. Every day in the Colorado Rockies is precious for Dick Over, ski instructor and guide, age 82. Fine, boy, this wonderful snow. He still has the moves he learned in the 10th Mountain Division, U.S. Army's first Alpine unit that would play a key role in the battle for Italy. The Italian campaign had been costly. Tens of thousands of Allied soldiers were killed or wounded, failing to break through the Nazis' heavily armed Gothic line. The Army's dramatic solution, bring in mountain troops. But the 10th was just an experiment back in 1942 when it recruited the best climbers and skiers.
We like to think we were the ultimate team.
The Italian mission for the 10th sounded impossible, surprised the German gunners by climbing Riva Ridge, 2,000 feet of rock in the snow at night. But it worked.
The remarkable thing about Riva Ridge is they got to the top and there was not a single soldier that was lost in the climb.
But the Germans dug in for 4 more months of mountain combat. 60 years later, Bob Parker remembers the heavy toll.
It was where a shell happened to fall. And the shells missed me and killed my best friend. That's the way it was.
The 10th Mountain Division lost almost 1,000 men, some of the U.S. Army's best and brightest, taking these mountains. But it also destroyed 5 full German divisions and broke the Nazis' last line of defense in Italy. Wild rejoicing throughout the Allied world.
But it was after the victory celebrations that the men of the 10th left another unexpected legacy.
Winter is back in style and
Back in the mountains of America, they put their ski training and their love of the sport to work to create the U.S. ski industry. 10th Mountain vets built Vail, Stowe, Aspen, and were instrumental in developing some 60 ski resorts and schools nationwide. Dick Over taught new generations of skiers.
The heritage, we feel, is well worth passing on.
Bob Parker became an editor of Skiing Magazine.
Jobs like that didn't exist before the war.
And as a vice president at Vail, he named a favorite ski run Riva Ridge. Back in Italy, in tiny alpine towns like Casteldiano, the 10th Mountain vets are still honored as liberators. Old war heroes, and always mountain soldiers. Jim Masada, NBC News, Torino.
All right, guys. I've got about 20 seconds to tie this up and put a bow on it and thank everybody and remind everybody. Check out the CCM store. See what kind of cool clothes they got because, you know, I'm feeling need to go shopping again soon. And also, don't forget, next Saturday, here on Sophia's Emporium, my dear friend and mentor, Randy Maugans. So you can't beat that.
Everybody loves Randy Maugans.
What a show today. It was really a lot of fun, and I wish that I could share the other things with you. I had more on an education for peace, but we will work that into videos because we're going to cover this whole book and discover the mysteries that will lead us to the promised land. So, with that, peace, love, and light from the big yellow house on the third cosmic ray in Stu's world. I love you guys. Think about life charting. Until next week, peace out.
Okay, so, you know, I have a couple questions that went through my mind towards the end of that video. And the first was, you know, I wonder if my grandpa Mitchell knew, even back then, that the war really didn't end. I wonder if that was part of the superior knowledge that he had. And then the other thing I wanted to bring up in his letter where he talks about the pillbox the soldiers had, what was inside it was a hit of meth. And that was where the original term super soldier came from. They needed them to be able to stay awake and not eat and be angry and have superhuman strength. So, for anybody that still wonders if, you know, the MK Ultra program is a conspiracy or real or not, I think we all know it is now. So, I enjoy this time with you guys, and I look forward to our next time together. With that, peace, love, and light from the big yellow house. I'm going to go eat some pizza. Bye.